Commander Vexter stood before the massive viewing screen on his flagship, watching the small blue planet rotate slowly in the darkness of space. Earth looked so peaceful from this distance, with white clouds swirling over brown and green continents. The data scrolling across his tactical display told a simple story that made him smile with satisfaction. "Look at this pathetic world," he said to Captain Thralix, who stood beside him reviewing the intelligence reports. "They have no energy shields protecting their planet, no massive orbital weapons platforms. Their most powerful weapons are still using chemical explosives and metal projectiles. It is almost insulting how easy this conquest will be." Thralax nodded in agreement as he read through the detailed scans. "Our intelligence shows their largest military forces number only in the hundreds of thousands. Their biggest wars involved maybe 10 million soldiers at most. Compare that to our last campaign, where we deployed 40 billion troops across 3 star systems. The hegemony had spent months gathering information about Earth and its inhabitants. Every scan, every intercepted communication, every piece of data pointed to the same conclusion. Humans were a primitive species that had barely crawled out of their own atmosphere. They had sent a few small ships to their nearby moon and some robotic probes to neighboring planets, but that was the extent of their space capabilities. Their technology is at least 500 years behind ours," Vextar continued, gesturing at the tactical display. "They still burn fossil fuels for energy. They still use wheeled vehicles for transportation. Most of their population lives in small settlements scattered across the planet's surface with no real coordination between their various tribal governments. What made Earth particularly attractive as a target was not just its weakness, but its resources. The planet was rich in rare minerals that the hegemony needed for their expanding empire. The oceans contained vast amounts of water, always valuable for long-range military campaigns. Most importantly, humans themselves would make excellent workers for the mining operations on other worlds. "Begin final preparations," Vextar ordered his bridge crew. "I want this operation completed within 72 hours. Full planetary bombardment of their major population centers, followed by ground forces to secure the survivors. Standard conquest protocol." Far away from the approaching alien fleet, hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in the command center of Luna Base. The facility had been constructed in complete secrecy over the past 15 years, built deep inside an ancient crater and shielded from all forms of detection. Morrison was a veteran of 3 major wars, a man whose gray hair and weathered face told the story of countless battles fought in defense of his home world. Beside him, Colonel Sarah Williams monitored multiple screens showing the positions of the alien vessels. Williams was younger than Morrison, but equally experienced, having served in special operations for most of her military career. Her calm demeanor never revealed the intensity with which she analyzed every detail of the approaching threat. 37 ships in their main battle group, Williams reported, her voice steady and professional. Standard hegemony attack formation, just like the intelligence briefings predicted. Their flagship is that massive dreadnought in the center, probably carrying their command staff. Morrison studied the tactical display showing the alien fleet's approach vector. Everything was proceeding exactly as the defense planners had anticipated. For decades, humanity had been preparing for this moment, knowing that eventually some alien species would see Earth as an easy target for conquest. "Alert all divisions," Morrison commanded, his voice carrying across the communications network 2 hidden bases scattered throughout the solar system. "Operation Iron Shield is now active. All units are to maintain communication silence until further orders." He turned to Williams with a slight smile that held no warmth. "Sarah, activate the sleeping giant protocol. It is time to wake up our friends." Williams nodded and began entering a complex series of commands into her console. Across the solar system, hidden installations that had appeared to be nothing more than space debris or abandoned satellites began powering up their systems. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids started charging their energy cores. Underground facilities on Mars and the outer moons opened their hangar doors for the first time in years. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, billions of people continued their normal daily routines, completely unaware of the drama unfolding in space above them. Children played in parks while their parents worked in offices and factories. Students attended classes, while teachers explained lessons about history and science. Farmers tended their crops, while shopkeepers served their customers. The carefully maintained illusion of a peaceful, primitive world continued exactly as planned. Every satellite transmission, every radio broadcast, every piece of electronic communication had been carefully crafted to present the image of a defenseless planet, populated by a simple species that posed no threat to anyone. But deep beneath the surface of this apparent normalcy, humanity's greatest military minds were putting the finishing touches on plans that had been developed over generations. The approaching alien fleet had no idea they were about to encounter an enemy unlike anything they had ever faced before. As the massive hegemony fleet moved through the darkness of space toward the small blue planet, Communications Officer Zalthek sat hunched over his scanning equipment in the depths of the flagship. His job was to monitor all electronic signals coming from Earth to gather intelligence about human society and military capabilities. What he had been discovering over the past several days was making him increasingly uncomfortable. The humans broadcast their entertainment programs across their planet using primitive radio waves and satellite networks. Zalthek had been recording and analyzing thousands of hours of these broadcasts, expecting to find simple stories about peaceful farming communities and basic scientific achievements. Instead, he found something that disturbed him greatly. These creatures are obsessed with warfare, he muttered to himself as he reviewed another batch of human movies and television shows. Every story seemed to involve conflict, struggle, and violence on a scale that seemed impossible for such a primitive species. Their entertainment was filled with tales of small groups of fighters, defeating massive armies through determination and clever tactics. What worried Zalthek even more were the historical records he had intercepted from human educational broadcasts. In digital libraries, the humans kept detailed records of their past conflicts, and those records painted a picture of a species that never seemed to know when to surrender. Their wars lasted for years, sometimes decades, with casualties that numbered in the millions. Commander Vextar Zalthek called nervously over the ship's communication system. I need to report some unusual findings about human behavioral patterns. These creatures seem to have a cultural obsession with what they call fighting against impossible odds. Their entertainment constantly celebrates warriors who refuse to give up even when facing certain death. Commander Vextar barely looked up from his tactical planning. All primitive species create myths about brave warriors, Officer Zalthek. It helps them feel better about their weakness. Continue monitoring, but do not bother me with their children's stories. But Zalthek could not shake his growing unease. The more he learned about human history, the more he realized these were not simple myths or exaggerated tales. The humans had detailed documentation, photographs, and video recordings of conflicts that showed levels of destruction and determination that seemed almost impossible to believe. Meanwhile, far below, on Earth's surface, General Marcus Thompson stood in the war room deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain. The North American Defense Command Center had been built during humanity's early nuclear age, designed to survive the most devastating attacks imaginable. Now it served as the coordination point for a defense plan that had been decades in the making. Thompson was a career military officer who had served in conflicts around the world. His weathered face and gray hair showed the effects of a lifetime spent preparing for the worst possible scenarios. Around the conference table sat representatives from every major military force on Earth, all united in a common purpose for the first time in human history. Intelligence confirms 37 hostile vessels approaching from the outer system, Thompson announced to the assembled officers. Long-range sensors show standard hegemony battle formation. They will be in weapons range of Earth within 6 hours. Lieutenant Emma Davis, the youngest officer present and a specialist in alien technology, raised her hand with a question that had been troubling her. Sir, what about the civilian population? Should we not begin evacuations of major cities? If these aliens have the firepower our intelligence suggests, millions of people could be killed in the initial bombardment. Thompson looked at the young officer with an expression that mixed approval for her concern with something that might have been pity for her innocence. Lieutenant Davis, you are thinking exactly like our enemies expect us to think. They expect us to panic, to run, to try to hide our people in bunkers and shelters like frightened animals. He turned to address the entire room, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Instead, we are going to show these aliens why nobody has ever successfully attacked Earth twice. We are going to demonstrate why every species in this galaxy gives our little planet a very wide berth. Back on the Hegemony flagship, Captain Thrillax had been conducting his own analysis of human historical records. Unlike Zolfek, who focused on entertainment and culture, Thrillax was studying actual military history and tactical doctrine. What he found made him increasingly nervous about the upcoming invasion. Commander Thrillax reported as he entered Vexstar's private quarters. I have been reviewing human military history in greater detail. I am seeing references to something they call total war. It appears that when humans engage in serious conflict, every aspect of their society becomes involved in the fighting effort. He activated a holographic display showing statistical data about human conflicts. Their largest wars involved entire populations, not just professional soldiers, but ordinary citizens, even children, participating in combat operations. Their industrial capacity, their scientific research, their cultural institutions, everything gets converted to support the war effort. Thrillax pointed to specific examples that had caught his attention. In their most recent global conflict, they converted factories that made automobiles into facilities for producing military vehicles. They took scientists who studied peaceful applications of nuclear energy and put them to work building weapons that could destroy entire cities. They mobilized hundreds of millions of people. Commander Vexstar waved dismissively at the data. Captain, you are allowing primitive propaganda to cloud your judgment. All species exaggerate their past conflicts to make themselves seem more formidable than they actually are. These humans are barely capable of reaching their own moon. How dangerous could they possibly be? He gestured toward the viewing screen, showing Earth growing larger as they approached. Look at that world. No orbital defenses, no energy shields, no sign of any serious military preparation. In 72 hours, this will all be over, and we will be loading the first cargo ships with human workers and planetary resources. But deep in his mind, Thrillax could not forget the images he had seen of human cities reduced to rubble. Of soldiers fighting, building by building, through destroyed urban areas. Of entire populations that refused to surrender, even when facing certain defeat. There was something about these humans that did not match their apparent primitive technology. The massive hegemony fleet finally reached the edge of Earth's solar system after their long journey through interstellar space. Commander Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet grow larger on his viewing screens. Everything appeared exactly as their intelligence had predicted. No defensive fleets came out to meet them. No warning shots were fired across their path. The primitive humans seemed completely unaware that their world was about to be conquered. Open communications to all human broadcast networks, Vexstar commanded his communications officer. It is time to inform these creatures of their new reality. Within moments, Vexstar's image was being transmitted across every television station, radio network, and internet connection on Earth. His tall, intimidating figure appeared on screens, in homes, offices, schools, and government buildings around the world. His alien features and advanced military uniform were designed to strike fear into any species that saw him. "Primitive humans of the planet you call Earth," Vexstar announced in a voice that carried the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "I am Commander Vexstar of the Hegemony Imperial Fleet. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our empire. You will surrender your planet immediately and prepare your population for relocation to work facilities on other worlds. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. You have 1 standard hour to transmit your unconditional surrender." The transmission ended, leaving billions of humans staring at blank screens. For several minutes, there was complete silence across the planet as people tried to process what they had just witnessed. Then the emergency broadcasts began, as world leaders rushed to coordinate their response. At the United Nations headquarters in New York, President Michael Carter of the United States stood before an emergency assembly of world leaders who had gathered via secure video links from around the globe. Carter was a former military officer who had been elected to lead his nation during a time of increasing international cooperation. His calm demeanor and steady voice had helped unite humanity's various governments in preparation for this exact moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carter said, as he looked directly into the cameras that would broadcast his words to the entire world, "we have just received an ultimatum from an alien species that believes we are helpless and defenseless. Our response to their demands is simple and unanimous: no." The assembly hall erupted in applause and cheers from the gathered representatives. Despite their different cultures, languages, and political systems, every human leader present was united in their determination to defend their home world. Within minutes of President Carter's declaration, Ambassador Lisa Reynolds, humanity's appointed spokesperson for alien contact, transmitted the official response to the Hegemony Fleet. Reynolds was a career diplomat who had spent years preparing for this moment. Studying alien psychology and communication protocols, Commander Vexstar and representatives of the Hegemony Empire, Reynolds said in a calm, professional tone that betrayed none of the tension she felt, "We respectfully decline your offer of surrender. However, we would be happy to discuss trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and peaceful diplomatic relations between our species. We believe that mutual cooperation would be far more beneficial than conquest for both our civilizations." On the Hegemony flagship, Commander Vexstar stared at his communications screen in complete disbelief. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered a primitive species that responded to an overwhelming show of force with a polite refusal and a counteroffer for diplomatic negotiations. "They think this is some kind of negotiation," he said to Captain Thrillax, who stood beside him, looking equally confused. "These creatures are either completely insane or too primitive to understand the situation they are facing." Vexstar's confusion quickly turned to anger at what he perceived as disrespect from an inferior species. "Begin the bombardment immediately," he ordered his weapons officers. "Target their major population centers. Perhaps when they see a few of their cities destroyed, they will understand that we are not here to negotiate." That was the moment when the first surprise revealed itself to the Hegemony forces. As their weapon systems powered up and began targeting Earth's surface, what had appeared to be random pieces of space debris suddenly came to life around them. Old satellites that had been drifting in orbit for decades activated powerful energy systems. Chunks of rock that had seemed like harmless asteroids opened hidden weapon ports. "Sir," shouted the sensor operator in panic, "I am detecting massive energy signatures from multiple contacts throughout the system. These are not debris fields. They are hidden weapons platforms." Before Vexstar could respond, brilliant beams of concentrated energy began striking his ships. The weapons that hit them were not the primitive chemical explosives or metal projectiles that human technology was supposed to be limited to. These were advanced particle beams and plasma cannons that should not have existed on a world that had barely mastered nuclear power. Impossible. Captain Thrillax shouted as alarms began blaring throughout the ship and damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. According to our intelligence, they should not possess this technology. They are using quantum-compressed plasma cannons and graviton beam arrays. These weapons are more advanced than anything in our own arsenal. The Hegemony fleet, which had approached Earth expecting to face no resistance whatsoever, suddenly found themselves under attack from weapons they could not even identify. Their shields, designed to protect against conventional energy weapons, were being overwhelmed by technologies they had never encountered before. On Luna Base, hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon, Admiral Morrison watched the battle unfold on his tactical displays. Beside him, Captain David Rodriguez coordinated the orbital defense platforms that had just revealed themselves to the alien invaders. Phase 1 complete, Morrison announced to his staff with grim satisfaction. All hidden platforms are online and engaging enemy targets. Their fleet formation is already beginning to break apart under our initial assault. He turned to Rodriguez with a smile that held no warmth but promised much more destruction to come. Captain, signal all remaining defense forces. Now let us show these aliens what human ingenuity really looks like when we stop pretending to be helpless. But it started as what Commander Vexstar believed would be a simple 3-day conquest of a primitive world had now stretched into 2 weeks of the most brutal and confusing warfare the Hegemony forces had ever experienced. The humans did not fight like any civilized species in the galaxy. They broke every rule of honorable combat that had been established over thousands of years of interstellar warfare. Communications Officer Zelthek rushed onto the bridge of the flagship, his face pale with fear and confusion. "Sir, they are using their weather control satellites against us," he reported in a voice that trembled with panic. "The humans have somehow created artificial storms in their upper atmosphere that are completely disrupting our targeting systems and navigation equipment." Commander Vexstar stared at the tactical display, showing massive electrical storms that had appeared out of nowhere directly above his ground forces. Lightning strikes were hitting his armored vehicles with impossible accuracy, while hurricane-force winds were grounding his atmospheric fighters. "Weather control satellites?" he demanded. "Our intelligence reports said they used those primitive devices only for predicting natural weather patterns. Apparently, their intelligence was deliberately misleading us," Sir Zelthek replied miserably. "They have been using their entire planetary infrastructure as a weapons system. Their communication satellites are jamming our signals. Their navigation satellites are feeding false information to our guidance systems. Even their entertainment, broadcast networks, are transmitting viruses into our computer systems on Earth's surface." Colonel Robert Taylor moved through the underground command center that had been hastily established beneath the city of Denver. Around him, military officers worked alongside civilian volunteers who had joined the resistance effort. Taylor was coordinating with similar groups in cities around the world, all of them united in their determination to drive the alien invaders from their planet. "Listen carefully, everyone," Taylor announced to the mixed group of soldiers and civilians gathered around him. "These aliens have made a critical mistake. They assumed we would fight like them, with organized military units following traditional battle plans. Instead, we are going to show them what happens when an entire civilization decides to fight back." He gestured to the various pieces of everyday technology that filled the room. "Remember, every toaster, every smartphone, every piece of electronic equipment can be turned into a weapon against these invaders. These aliens have never faced an enemy that fights with their entire civilization mobilized for war. They expect to face our armies, but instead, they are facing all of humanity in a laboratory facility that had been converted from a university research center. Dr. Jennifer Brooks led a team of scientists and engineers who were working around the clock to analyze captured alien technology. Brooks was a materials science expert who had volunteered to lead the rapid technology adaptation program that was proving crucial to humanity's defense. "We have completely decoded the schematics for their plasma rifle design," she announced to her exhausted but excited team. "Not only that, but we have identified 3 major improvements we can make to increase their power output and reduce their energy consumption. Manufacturing of our improved version begins in 3 hours." Her assistant, a young graduate student named Peter Chen, looked up from his computer terminal with amazement. "Dr. Brooks, how is this possible? This alien technology should be hundreds of years ahead of anything we can understand." Brooks smiled grimly as she continued working on the weapon modifications. "Peter, these aliens made the same mistake that every invading force in human history has made. They underestimated our ability to adapt and learn. We may not have invented this technology, but we can certainly improve it once we understand how it works." Meanwhile, in the countryside outside the city of Chicago, farmer Tom Wilson was putting the finishing touches on his latest creation. Wilson had spent 30 years operating heavy agricultural equipment on his family farm. When the alien ground forces had landed in his area, he had not evacuated like they expected. Instead, he had converted his tractors, harvesters, and irrigation systems into mobile artillery platforms. "Come on, you alien bastards," Wilson muttered as he loaded another improvised explosive device into the launcher he had built from his corn harvester. "Let's see how you like fighting farmers who know every inch of their own land." 300 miles away, in the suburbs of Boston, high school teacher Anna Martinez was leading a group of her computer science students in what might have been the most important lesson of their lives. The 17 and 18-year-old students had managed to hack into the alien communication networks and were now feeding false information to the hegemony forces. "Remember what I taught you about network security," Martinez whispered to her students as they worked on their laptops in the basement of the abandoned school building. "These aliens may have advanced technology, but their cybersecurity protocols are designed to defend against other alien species, not against human hackers, who think completely differently than anyone else in the galaxy." One of her students, a quiet girl named Susan, who had always been the best programmer in the class, looked up from her screen with excitement. "Mrs. Martinez, I think I have found a way to access their weapon systems remotely. If we can get into their targeting computers, we can make their own guns shoot at each other instead of at us." Back on the hegemony flagship, Commander Vexstar stood in his command center, watching his carefully planned invasion fall apart in ways he could never have imagined. His ground forces were being attacked by farmers using agricultural equipment. His communication networks were being disrupted by children using primitive computers. His most advanced weapons were being captured and then used against him by an enemy that seemed to improve everything they touched. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his senior staff. "These creatures are supposed to be primitives. They should not even understand our technology, much less be able to use it against us." His science officer, Krelton, approached with a data tablet containing analysis that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. "Sir, I have been studying their adaptation patterns. These humans are not just learning to use our technology, they are actually improving it. Their modifications to our weapon designs are increasing efficiency by 30%. Their learning curve is beyond anything in our databases of known species." Krelton paused, clearly struggling to understand what he was reporting. "Sir, in just 2 weeks, they have gone from primitive chemical weapons to manufacturing plasma cannons that are superior to our own designs. If this continues, they will soon have technological advantages that we cannot match." Commander Vexstar stared at the tactical display showing his forces being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. For the first time since the invasion began, he began to understand why no other species in the galaxy had ever attempted to conquer the small blue planet that had seemed so defenseless from a distance. The final battle took place in the dark space above Earth's atmosphere, where the remnants of the once mighty hegemony fleet made their last desperate attempt to salvage something from their failed invasion. Commander Vextar's flagship, which had seemed so powerful and intimidating just 3 weeks earlier, now drifted helplessly through space with massive holes torn in its hull by weapons that the humans had built using captured alien technology. Vextar lay trapped beneath a collapsed support beam in what remained of his command bridge. Around him, emergency lights flickered weakly as the ship's power systems failed one by one. The air was becoming thin as life support systems shut down, and he could taste blood in his mouth from internal injuries that his medical systems could no longer treat. Through the cracked view screen, he could see human spacecraft moving with deadly efficiency as they finished destroying the last of his escort vessels. These were not the primitive chemical-powered rockets that his intelligence, REPORTS, had described. These were sleek, advanced warships that combined the best features of hegemony technology with human innovations that somehow made everything work better than the original designs. With his remaining strength, Vextar activated his personal communication device and opened a channel to the Galactic Council on the far side of the galaxy. The signal would take several minutes to reach them, but he had to know the answer to the question that had been tormenting him since the invasion began to fall apart. Galactic Council, he gasped into the communicator, each word causing him pain as his damaged lungs struggled to function. This is Commander Vextar of the Hegemony Expeditionary Force. Our invasion of Earth has failed completely. These humans are not the primitive species we were told to expect. Why did you not warn us about their true nature? For several long minutes, there was only silence on the communication channel. Vextar began to wonder if his transmission had failed to reach its destination. Then, slowly, a voice began to emerge from the static. It was the ancient voice of Council Elder Mordok, heavy with the weight of centuries of accumulated knowledge and bitter experience. Because, young commander, the Elder's voice said with what might have been sadness, or perhaps pity, every species in this galaxy must learn this lesson about humans in exactly the same way. No amount of warning or explanation can truly prepare anyone for what they are capable of when they are threatened. Vextar tried to respond, but his voice was growing weaker as the ship's life support systems continued to fail. Around him, the few surviving members of his crew were either unconscious or too badly injured to move. Elder Mordok continued speaking, his words carrying across the vast distances of space to reach the dying hegemony commander. Humans do not simply defend themselves when they are attacked. They evolve, they adapt, they learn from every challenge and become stronger because of it. What you experienced was not just a military defeat, but a demonstration of why their species has survived every threat they have ever faced. Meanwhile, aboard what had once been Vextar's flagship, Admiral Morrison walked through the corridors with Lieutenant Colonel Brian Harris, surveying the alien technology that human engineers were already beginning to study and improve. The ship had been captured intact when its crew surrendered after seeing their commander's vessel crippled, and it represented a treasure trove of advanced knowledge that would help humanity prepare for whatever came next. Morrison paused to listen as Elder Mordok's transmission continued to broadcast throughout the captured vessel. The ancient alien's words were being recorded by human intelligence officers who wanted to understand how the rest of the galaxy viewed their species. The galaxy learned long ago that humans are not prey, Mordok explained, his voice now reaching not just the dying hegemony commander, but also the human forces who had defeated him. They are apex predators disguised as peaceful explorers. Their entire species treats every threat as a learning opportunity. Every attack makes them stronger. Every challenge teaches them something new that they can use to defend themselves better in the future. The Elder paused, and when he continued, There was definitely sadness in his ancient voice. "We do not attack Earth because we have all seen what happens to those who do. Some species have tried to conquer them and been completely destroyed. Others have tried to trade with them and discovered that humans can out-negotiate anyone in the galaxy. A few have tried to ignore them, only to find that humans will not be ignored when they decide they want something." Back on Earth's surface, President Carter stood before a gathering that would have been impossible to imagine just a month earlier, in the rebuilt United Nations Assembly Hall. Human leaders sat alongside surviving hegemony officers who had been captured during the failed invasion. Carter was about to make an announcement that would surprise both groups. "Ladies and gentlemen, beings of all species," Carter began, his voice carrying the same calm authority that had helped unite humanity during the crisis. "The conflict between our civilizations has ended, but that does not mean our relationship must end as well. The United States of Earth formally invites any surviving hegemony personnel to join our growing alliance of species who have learned that cooperation is more profitable than conquest." Several of the captured alien officers looked at each other in amazement. In their experience, conquering species either enslaved their defeated enemies or executed them. The idea of being invited to join the civilization they had tried to destroy was completely foreign to their understanding of how warfare was supposed to work. Carter continued his speech, gesturing toward charts and displays that showed humanity's rapid technological advancement since the invasion began. "We believe strongly that former enemies can become the strongest allies. Your knowledge of galactic politics and advanced technologies, combined with our ability to innovate and adapt, could create a partnership that benefits everyone involved." As the dust settled from the brief but intense conflict, Captain Williams stood on the observation deck of Luna Base, looking out at the expanding fleet of human vessels that now filled Earth's orbital space. The ships represented a completely new level of technological capability for humanity, incorporating the best features from multiple alien civilizations that had made the mistake of underestimating Earth's defenders. Sir Williams said to Admiral Morrison as he joined her at the viewing window, "What do we do now? Our entire defensive strategy was based on the assumption that we would remain hidden and isolated. Now the whole galaxy knows about our capabilities." Morrison looked out at the fleet of advanced warships that bore human markings, but used technology that would have seemed like magic just weeks earlier. His weathered face showed a slight smile that held both satisfaction and anticipation for what lay ahead. "Now, Sarah," he said quietly, "we go say hello to our new neighbors, and we make sure they understand that Earth is always willing to make friends. But we are also always prepared to defend ourselves and our allies against anyone who threatens the peace we are trying to build." Far below them, the blue planet continued, its quiet orbit around its yellow star, appearing as peaceful and defenseless as ever to any distant observers who might be watching. But now, the galaxy's most dangerous species continued their peaceful masquerade with the full knowledge that their secret was out, and that anyone who chose to test them would learn the same lesson that the hegemony had learned at such great cost.